Hi, my name is Aditya Sriram and my symbol is the color gray. At first I thought that I wouldn't really be able to find anything about gray, and I had absolutely no clue what to look for. As soon as I started to read chapter 2, I realized that gray basically meant lifeless and dull. The color gray is used to describe the Valley of Ashes, which lies between West Egg and New York. Gray cars, gray ashes, gray land. That's a quote from the book. It's on page 27. And also, the color gray conveys the feeling of lacking spirit and dreariness. This area was where men worked tirelessly in the ashes, and people saw this area as dirty and low-life. Mr. Wilson, the husband of Tom's lover, Myrtle, is a handsome but lifeless man who is described as gray by the ashes in the air. The gray on him symbolizes the lack of spirit that he has. Firstly, I found a passage where Fitzgerald describes the Valley of Ashes. He says, "Above the gray land and the spasms of bleak dust which drift endlessly over it." In this phrase, he describes the scene and landscape of the Valley of Ashes, and how the land is gray and dulled, filled with dust which is just drifting endlessly over it. He is implying that their area is lifeless and just a dead place to be in. Another reference is when Fitzgerald describes the everyday train ride to work. The Valley of Ashes is bound on one side by a small foul river, and when the drawbridge is up to let barges through, the passengers on the waiting train can stare at a dismal scene for as long as half an hour. In this passage, Fitzgerald describes the Valley of Ashes as a picture of absolute desolation and poverty. He describes how it lacks a glamorous surface and lies gray halfway between West Egg and New York. He also says that the Valley of Ashes symbolizes the moral decay hidden by the beautiful scenery of the eggs. The valley is created by industrial dumping and is therefore a product of capitalism. It is the home to the only poor characters in the novel. Another quote from the book is, "The interior was unprosperous and bare. The only car visible was the dust-covered wreck of a Ford which crouched in the dim corner." In this phrase, Fitzgerald describes a common workplace where it is dull and dead, with one old man, and just how unprosperous it is to live in such a place. Throughout the book, I noticed one commonality. All the places that were described as gray or dull is where all the poor characters, for example, Mr. Wilson, in the book lived. This connects with Fitzgerald's view of America because this is supposed to be the great American novel, and he is trying to imply that if you're not well off, things are not going to be good for you. In the process, I also read a literary critique. In the literary critique I read, the author Kevin Ray looks at the patterns of colors, and he says that many authors use color to evoke feelings about place and character in their writing. I agree with Kevin Ray because Fitzgerald's use of color makes understanding the book much easier and gives insight to how each character is placed and how each character acts.